You are listening to Leadership ReImagined, a White Horse Leadership podcast. For more resources, prayers, or to connect with us on social media, you can visit our website or download the White Horse Leadership app. You can find the direct link to both in our show notes. If this show encourages you and strengthens your leadership, please consider subscribing and leaving a quick review. It takes just a few minutes and helps us expand our reach to new leaders. Thank you for listening. Well, welcome back to Leadership ReImagined. I'm Audra Haney, and I'm here with Dr. Rick Dunn. I can't believe we're already on episode number 7. So tell us a little bit about what our principle is
Absolutely.
today.
So the wisdom required for a redemptive leadership journey can only be received through his voice, in his word, by the Spirit, and through his body. And Audra, that is just so layered. Mm-hmm. And we've needed these episodes and conversations we've had before to get to here, because this requires of us a real trust and surrender in his voice being available, him wanting to speak to us, and how that actually happens in all the different ways it happens.
Yeah, and we were talking about the importance of the order we've had so far, because I think as we step into some of these harder moments and these concepts, we have to go back to the truth and the comfort that are in some of the earlier episodes.
Yeah, comfort is a perfect word, because we need security. There's a lot of risk here. Mm-hmm. If I sit with a leader and I'm walking with them in my own leadership experience, I know yours too, uncertainty is the deal, right? It's the thing of like, as long as I know what to do, I'm like, I've always said, if I know what to do, I'm going to do it. I have the will to do it, right? Mm-hmm. But leadership's all about uncertainty. If you always know what to do, or a team always knows what to do, you don't really need much of a leader. You just need like a cheerleader or a resource gatherer or something. But it's in the not knowing that we feel so vulnerable, and to admit that I actually can't know by myself, and that there is a greater wisdom than myself that is needed here now you go from what's scary, I don't know what to do is scary, and now I know that I can't know without help. Right? That's not easy to do.
It takes a lot of surrender.
A lot of security in the things we've talked about.
Yeah, and one of the things I always loved as a parent, someone encouraged me to pray that my kids would have God's wisdom, because it's really a gift. It's not something that we can earn or figure out on our own or gain just merely through experience. So define wisdom for us as we talk through it today. What are we really talking about?
I will, but I got to tell you a story I've never told you before. Because when you said that, I got to tell you this story real quick. When I was a little kid, we didn't go to church. My parents read Bible stories to me. I didn't have any other influences. And the most intriguing story to me ever was Solomon. And I can't tell you why, but so I remember as a 4 or 5-year-old kid praying every night for God to give me wisdom.
And he answered that prayer.
I hope so. I hope there's enough for podcasts at least.
Yeah,
but I think so. But here's the thing. We had this group come to the church I was leading at the time, and they did this big presentation, and they wanted to give me a gift for having, it's an international group. And so they gave me this gift, and it was a glass plaque on a stand that had a leaf from a King James Version Bible several hundred years ago. It was an incredible gift. And so you know me, I'm like your husband, Corey. I'm like, that's really wonderful. I never took the time to look at it. I just thought that's really great. I've got a leaf that's hundreds of years old from a Bible. I'm in my office one day and I'm like, I wonder what that is. You know what? It was the story of Solomon asking God for wisdom. Is that not amazing? So this is part of what we're talking about, that there's an intentionality of what God's up to. And that was my journey that's unique. But each of us have these different places and ways which he shows up for us, right? You were telling a story before you were on here about God showing up. And as a leader, I don't want to lead, Audra, unless I believe he will show up. And so when he shows up, some of the things Scripture says about it's true and good and beautiful and right and peaceable and strong, and it's all those things. But I think what I most longed for in uncertainty was for me to be able to say with a good bit of confidence, this is the way because it's his way.
Amen. Yeah.
His way. And that's where the surrender comes. That's where the humility comes in. Because what choices would actually reflect the character and wisdom of God? And I'm not capable of that on my own. And I've got to have the authority of Scripture. I got to have the witness and testimony and leadership of the Word. And I have to have a few people, some people in the body who kind of just speak into that, because I might make some stuff up and say, no, but if it lines with the Word, it lines with the Spirit speaking, and really trusted people who know me and understand, and we come to that conclusion, then at that point for me, Audra, that is the wisdom of God, and that's what we're going to move forward with.
Yeah. And I would say maybe as believers, this is one of the most underutilized treasures, that we have access to the wisdom of God. But why is it so hard for us as leaders to really lean into this?
Right. So we talk about leaders having bias to action. I call it we're trigger happy, right? We're like, hey, there's a problem. We got it. There's an issue there, or we're like firemen. I got a hose. There's got to be a fire here somewhere, And so that's that brings us energy, that moves us. And so it's from the very beginning, the deep reflection and surrender before I act is just not in the flesh, right? Well, then you compound that with our tendency towards self-sovereignty and I don't want people to think I don't know what to do. I don't want people to start to think I'm not competent. And so what happens, Audra, is sometimes you act and you think you're acting to be a strong leader, but you're actually acting because you're afraid of people thinking you don't know what to do.
Right. And there's a lot of pressure from the outside coming at all times. So to push that back and take the time and admit, maybe I don't know, I need to seek the Lord.
Right. And the Lord has deposited in me the stewardship of this particular leadership role, but the access to the wisdom has to be ongoing. It's not like I learn it and I got it, right? Yeah. And it's not like I know it by myself. And so I think just paying attention to the process, being intentional about it, and stepping into, I surrender before I act, but it doesn't have to be like I surrender for 6 months and I act. It might be just in a moment. Hey, before I say this, Lord, I just want to check in with you. Before I say this, I just want to take some time in prayer, and I'm going to call this guide, coach, friend, whoever, spouse. I'm going to say, hey, I'm thinking like this. Am I missing something here? And that, it doesn't feel like maybe to the flesh like strength, but it is strength. And actually, the flesh fools us into a false strength when we try to act without his wisdom.
That's so good. And I think a lot of the challenge can come in sometimes. It's very counterintuitive what the Lord will ask of us. His ways are different than our own ways, so different than the way we would do things. So that's hard to surrender that.
Yeah. Abraham, hey, I know that this is the promised one, but I need you to go sacrifice him on all, which is not consistent with his character at all, not what he would do. And then Hebrews 11 says, but Abraham thought, well, he must be going to raise him from the dead, because he said, but how hard is that? Or Joseph, hey, here's this vision, and here's where you're going to rule, and your brother's going to bow down to you. But I think we'll take 25 years for that to happen. And in the meantime, let's get you falsely accused. Let's throw you in prison, a pit. What in the world are we doing here, right? What in the world? Well, what we're doing is we're telling the redemption story. We're displaying the fullness of the grace and the power, the justice, the mercy, the kindness, the compassion, the Father and who he is. And he's putting all that on display, and it's not super efficient. And I'm not suggesting that being inefficient is being godly. Although if it were, I'd be the most godly person I know. But I would have godliness. But I am saying that when efficiency becomes the God, which is often in leadership, particularly the larger organization gets, or where doing things that everybody can look at and say, yeah, that was smart, that was great, or we got the results we wanted. When in fact, sometimes the wisdom of God will call you to do things where people are just looking at you like you have no idea what you're doing. And that is a hard place to be as a leader, to feel the scrutiny of people questioning you and you can't explain to it, but this is what the story God is telling. We have to do it this way.
And a lot of times that story is even so much bigger than we could imagine.
Well, we can never imagine that. One of my favorite stories of if you we won't unpack it here, but Joseph, the story of Joseph is a wonderful redemption story. But if you really want to see redemption, watch Judah.
Yeah.
Because the story of Joseph is, I think, Judah's redemption story.
Yeah. So
which,
powerful.
what in the world? Like, what are we going, And so if I'm Joseph, I'm like, really? I had to go through all this for that? But that is a part of what it looks like. And so I think just taking a deep breath and just saying, okay, I don't have to know. I can't know by myself, but he would not abandon me and leave me in this place without access to his wisdom.
It's so good. And a huge piece of this is the waiting piece. Talk to me about how important that piece is of waiting on the Lord.
Only if you'll talk about it too.
Yes.
Because I know this is a huge part of your journey, and I really want to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah.
There's a moment where David is going into battle, and he is told by the Lord to wait by the balsam tree. And the Lord gave me that passage in the 1990s and said, "This is how I want you to lead." And I was like, "Oh man, that's just no fun at all," because you just waiting feels vulnerable. Waiting feels risky. Waiting feels weak. Waiting feels incompetent. Waiting feels like, and this is something we have to really, when we're younger leaders especially, is I ought to know what to do. I ought to, we just kind of live with that. I ought to know what to do. And I think, but at the end of the day, waiting, Andra, takes the kind of the locus of control out of me and into him. And I actually think that's what's happening in leadership, that I really, really would like to have control.
Yes. Yeah.
And waiting is an affirmation, an act of worship that I don't. Yeah. And that's scary. It's
so true. And I would say the last 20 years of my career, the Lord keeps me in the master class of waiting. And I was really thinking on this today. There's nothing in my life that's beautiful, rich, meaningful, and purposeful that did not require a really painful season of waiting, whether that be marriage, children, through infertility, miscarriage, career, all of it required a really painful season of waiting that I was very well aware of, that God is making me wait. But in that, there is just this refining of my motives. There is a development of my character. But I think the biggest battle in that is the Lord has promised me something and he's not coming through because it's not on my timeline.
Yes. And you can't see it tangibly right here.
And, as in my latest waiting journey, it just really hit me that the Lord's if he makes you a promise, if he promises to be there for you, or he speaks a promise over your life, it's no less true on year 10 than it was on day 1.
Right. That's so good.
And the wait, there's something that happens in our flesh in the waiting that just releases the truth and the promise of God and buys that lie of the enemy that God has forgotten me. Yeah. God is not here. Yeah. When again, his promise is no less true on the 10th year than it was on day 1.
Yeah.
And
the story of Joseph, right? 25 years.
And timing is everything. Yeah. And this is kind of a silly story, but recently my daughter loves chickens. She's a chicken whisperer. She has her 20 chickens. And she came to me with the computer. She had it in the cart, but she said, "I want this silky chicken. It is my dream. I want this chicken, and it's in the cart. It's ready to go." And as her mom, I want her to have this specific breed of chicken that she wants. But I told her it's almost winter. It's a bad time. You're starting school. And she was distraught. But I think we can all relate as parents. Like, sometimes the timing is everything. Right. It's not a no, but it's a wait, and there's kindness in there. There's wisdom. And you're not disregarding her or invalidating her or dismissing her what she wants is valid. And waiting it's just very hard on our flesh because we lose the control, like you said. I think it's interesting. You and I met and have begun working together, in both of us in waiting moments. Yes, yeah. So Whitehorse is the work we do in Whitehorse, the co-creative work is very
much. I mean, like now it's pretty accelerated and we're loving it and we're enjoying it, but it came out of a waiting period of what God had called me to do specifically with White Horse, what he was calling you to do and with your gifting. And I couldn't have seen that coming. So that's another example. And I think the other thing, Audra, is, so what if I wait and I feel like I know this is the wisdom of God that I lead and do this, and then it doesn't get better, it gets worse. And that's something we're going to have to let go of too as leaders. It's how we evaluate outcomes is very much driven by cultural expectations, definitions of success, leadership wiring, and we really have to let go of the wisdom of God accomplishes his outcomes, which is his redemption story, which may or may not look exactly like we thought or even want it to look like.
Absolutely. I think the times that my family has stepped out in faith, seeking God's wisdom, not our own, it's looked much more like running to the front line of a battle than frolicking in a field of peace.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think because the enemy sees that obedience, sees the fruit on the other side of it, the battle that comes with that obedience initially is very intense.
Yes. And in leadership, the battle's coming at you all the time.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think I really love the way you phrased that. These are the way I heard it or think about it is that surrender of obedience to his wisdom, that is the battle.
Yes.
Right. That's the battle. And then we go from there. And so if anyone lacks wisdom, let him ask.
That's my favorite verse.
Yeah. And, but ask not for wisdom that is simply utilitarian or simply practically going to work out or maybe even is comfortable. I have friends or people I coach, when I walk them through really hard things, I'll say, I know you want to know from God how to fix that, but that's just a minor point, what you're going to do. The major point is what's he actually inviting you into, because the thing about it, Audra, is if we actually learn more of his wisdom, we're learning more of him.
His character.
More of his character, which at the end of the day is why we're in leadership, not just accomplish things, but to be known by and know him more. And wisdom allows us the opportunity for that, but the posture has to be, I lack it. I don't know. And I can live with the uncertainty and I can live with the outcome. If I know it's from you, I'll live with the outcome, even if it's not what I would have designed the outcome to be.
Absolutely.
And again, these things in the wiring of a leader are not, it takes a lifetime, I think, to learn how to live in those things.
I think so too. And every season will bring a new opportunity to seek that wisdom. And I think what I love about James 1:5 so much is it says God will answer and give it generously.
Yes.
And it's, we can pray and God, we know God is able to do all things, but sometimes it's a no. But we always know when we ask for wisdom, it's a yes.
Well, here's an example of that. So in February of 2023, I came to realize I didn't really have a clear vision for the next 5 years for the church I was leading. And I always kind of lived in 5-year increments. Lord, what do you have? And I didn't have that. And so I really prayed and I sought the Lord and I asked him for what's next? Where do you want me to lead? Because he's always given me that for 20 something years. He'd given me that. And the answer was no. And I realized, well, that's deposited in someone else. It's not mine anymore. And so I remember in this very room we're recording back behind us, sitting with Teresa, my wife, and saying, I think I'm done, but I don't know what I'm going to do next. And so I was walking through the grocery store yesterday, and someone from the church I used to lead was there, and we were talking. It was really good. How are you doing? I said, it's wonderful. I'm just, and I realized I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, that was like, I asked for wisdom on how to lead, and he said, no, you just, and so, but that surrender was essential to the journey of the discovery of the wisdom of what he would have for White Horse to be and White Horse to become. I didn't even have the name White. We had nothing, and nothing to move towards other than I knew that he had something he wanted me to steward. And that scary, risky, And maybe the Lord he blinded me a little bit because I was in the store yesterday. I'm like, what were you thinking? Like, what have you done? Like, I look back at that. It feels It feels irresponsible.
Yes, there's times it can look that way.
Yes, but my wife said to me, if you know it's of Him, then we must do it.
Absolutely.
Right, and that's the level of conviction we want as leaders. If we know we must, then we must do it. And then sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes we've sought and our best understanding. And so I would tell people sometimes, my best understanding of the will of God is this. We may find out later, like with the elders of the church. I'm not going to try to market them into my vision.
Right.
I believe this is the best thing. I might be wrong, but of all the things I saw, I believe this is how the Lord leads us. And because we've sought His wisdom, because we are faithful and surrenders, we know how He will be faithful, even if later we find out, well, we could have done that a little differently. So this isn't like I think this is important to say, this isn't like well, don't ever do anything until you have 110% conviction. I didn't know what I was going to do. I just know I need to leave. And sometimes I didn't know exactly if I was right, but it was the best I knew. It was time to make a decision. And that's where the trust comes again, that He will meet us in the outcome, even if maybe we later we're like, I think I would have done that differently.
Well, and I do think that having wisdom, it doesn't always mean we have every answer. And a lot of times
it does not.
It doesn't. It means we don't have all the answers we want, but we know the Lord's in it.
That's right.
Talk to me, as we look for that affirmation, as we look for, is this from the Lord? The importance of that community around you and how He'll work through that.
Oh, my goodness. So we all have these mind traps. We talk about this in White Horse. We have these mind traps that limit our thinking, limiting beliefs about ourselves, limiting beliefs about the world, limiting beliefs about who God is, self-doubt, ways of thinking about things that actually aren't the true definition of reality, but in the family we grew up in, it felt like it was. So that's how we think about life. So we have all these things. And we are, it's like so far under-resourced if the only processing we're doing is inside of here on our own. I mean, it is really, I used to say that the elders of the church, their primary job was to protect the congregation from me. And I don't mean that like I was a bad guy or something like that, but to make sure that I wasn't just having my agenda and having and I remember in 2009, the Lord just gave me a real clear sense of where I thought we should go. And I had to submit that to the elders. I can't tell you that I know for sure, but I need you to pray with me about this because, and so, yeah, it's dangerous actually to think that you can just know it all. It's also dangerous to think that you're going to be always accurate about how you discern. So that's very important. And this is a thing like, I say to people, hey, don't wait till you're in a crisis to build a community because that's too late.
True.
Build your community. I would say to leaders, build your community because there's going to be a day when you're going to be like, I don't know what is going on. I don't know what to do. And those are the people you're going to call. And those are the people you're going to go sit down with. Those are the people who are going to pray with you. And when those people and whoever's the authority or whatever, elders or leadership team or all come to align with it, it is at that point then therefore the will of God because He will use it.
And I can't count how many times maybe you can't see what the Lord's doing in your own life. You're in the storm.
Absolutely.
But the power, and I think this is what's so powerful about what you do with the one-on-one coaching and times you've spoken into my life and Corey's life where it's like, we're in a storm. We can't always see what God's doing, but just having someone to speak life over you and see what you don't see, it can be the thing that gets you through. Yeah. And I think that's such a gift.
And you have to have the conviction that you're not supposed to know by yourself. You're so not supposed to know by yourself. It's
and
okay.
God created us to be a body.
Yes, and to need each other. Yep.
Yeah. All right, so let's speak to the leader. Maybe they are feeling really burned out, really isolated, and maybe they're having a hard time hearing God's wisdom or really experiencing the presence of the Lord. How would you encourage them?
That is such an important question because there have been times, Audra, I just feel like He's not there. I'm just like, you were talking about you pray and you pray is even hearing me. We were talking about that before we podcast. And because we're biased to action as leaders, then it's like, well, then we just work harder. We're going to try harder, and that doesn't work. So if you are just like, I can't hear it, it's just not working, I think it's really important to step back away from it and stop trying to figure all that out and just really work on your own journey, your own life with the Lord. Just like I obviously you're thwarting me knowing this because you're not playing hide and go seek. All right. So he's not playing hide and go seek. So it's not like, well, I didn't read this or I didn't do that. It's not that. And he's not asking you to perform harder, no more. He's asking you to learn. So just the posture of, we've talked about it. What do I not see? What do I not know? How can I learn? How can I grow? Not related to this decision, just related to life, because that'll start to get me more connected, get me kind of get out of the anxiety part of it. I also may need to sit down with a trusted friend, a coach, guide, counselor, pastor, or someone, and just say, hey, I'm just so anxious right now. And I'm so kind of anxious, I just can't get out of my own head. So we may need to do that. And just compassion for yourself. There's like, when you get to the place where you can't hear or you don't know, it's not because you've necessarily done something wrong. I mean, if there's sin in your life, then let the Lord convict and work on that, not condemn, but convict you and repent and grow and do the steps you need to do to move forward. But if it's just you didn't fail. It's not because you're supposed to. It may just be something else he wants to say to you first. And what he may be wanting to say to you is, actually, I don't need you to fix that for me to love you. I just need you to know I care about you. I don't need you to do that because if you don't do that, you're going to let all these people down. Part of what's going on inside of you, Rick, is you're worried too much about disappointing these people, and you actually need to let go of that. You see how that works? Like, he may be after something else, and instead of being like, white-knuckled through this God's wisdom thing and read 4 more books and 10 more podcasts, and it might just be that you just need to be more, just release. Put your oxygen mask on, on the plane. Put your oxygen mask on and just breathe a little while, and then very likely it'll start being revealed to you.
I love that. I know for me, a lot of times when I get in those spaces, I'm treating my relationship with the Lord as like a working relationship.
That is so true.
Instead of this friendship, fatherhood. And I think if I can begin to shift really intentionally back to that, it usually works itself out.
Yeah. Everything good comes out of that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everything
good comes from there. And you were talking about all the hard battles that come up with the meaningful and the beautiful, and they come from that. It's because the flesh kind of give, okay, all right, not God. Mm-hmm. I can't be God. I can't control this. And then that's the beginning of him being God. And then out of that relationship you're describing, all of a sudden, okay, well, there we go.
Yeah, and the things that I had planned, the visions I had, God had a different thing in mind, and it's so much better. Mm-hmm. But without that surrender, without that posture, I would have never arrived there.
Never. Mm-hmm. So the wisdom of God are about aligning with his ways and being his character. And sometimes, as you said, get out of the working relationship and just get aligned there in the heart. And then from that will flow all the things that need to flow. If you're really burned out and or if you feel like God burned you, like I do, Moses at the end of Exodus chapter 5, it's a hard story to read because he turns to God and says, you didn't do anything you said.
We can relate to that.
Oh yeah. I told you out in the desert, this wasn't going to work. And here we are, and I think sometimes we just need to say, Lord, I just feel betrayed by this. I feel abandoned by this. And I know that's not true, but I want you to know that's how I feel because you already know it. And then the throne of grace that's offered by Jesus, that he empathizes, he understands what it's like to be in the garden, sweating drops of blood, saying, do I have to do this? Knowing in his heart and his mind and his soul and his will, of course I'm going to do this, but my humanity, I don't even want to do this. And so, and then the Father sends angels to minister to him. So it's vulnerable. It's really vulnerable. And the things we've been talking about before, the Father's love and worship and all those things, those are the things we want to cultivate for the moments when it feels like, I remember last year I had something happen and I thought, why did you do this to me? What are we doing here? And I feel like I was faithful here, and the outcome I got was horrible on this particular thing. And it took me probably 6 months later, Audra, to realize, no, I needed that, because that began to expose some things in me that needed to be addressed. And what felt like the threat of his abandonment, betrayal, rejection was actually the gift of his pursuit.
I love that.
And that is the wisdom of God, when it's rightly understood, will always be a recognition, this is my Father pursuing me. And that actually matters a whole lot more than whatever happens next.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So temporary compared to the gift of God's wisdom.
Yeah, you were talking today about your husband, Corey, like you were all talking about, one day he'll retire from this job, like Rick did. And you realize how important what you're doing is and how temporary it is.
It's so true. And it goes by so fast.
Yes, it does.
Just like raising kids, it's like it'll be a blink.
That's
and
right.
You're there. And I love how you get to speak into what's that picture of that leader you want to be when you hand it over and you're done.
Right. And that's at White Horse, we want to journey with leaders through that journey of building up oneself in that wisdom and relationship with the Father. Our podcast, one of our White Horse podcasts is called Refuge and Reservoir. Casey Anderson and I do. Yeah. It's on whole person spirituality. And it's a very honest journey into how we think about physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. All these things are a part of our spiritual journey. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all the mind. Well, what am I supposed to do with that? Particularly when I don't feel that, or my body's weak, or my emotions are wounded, whatever. So I'd really encourage that as part of this journey too.
Such an important piece of all of this.
We must continue to cultivate our relationship. I'm going back to what you said. We must continue to cultivate our relationship with Him as Father, lest this becomes a working relationship. And so that relationship, above all things, is what we want to spiritually grow in.
I love that. So as we kind of close out, what are some practical steps you would have for the leaders?
Sure. So I encourage leaders to write down, here are my questions. Here are the things I don't know. And to offer those to the Lord and begin, how you talk about, people sometimes say, keep track of your prayer requests. Yeah. Well, keep track of the moments where you didn't know, and then later you did know. And what was that like? And what did you learn in that? And what was God up to? Because that starts to build that muscle, that resilience to like, oh, okay, this is actually how this thing works, right? Acknowledge to yourself in some way what it means to wait. So it's over time. I learned as soon as something came up at me, as soon as I felt spun up like I got to do, I knew that was the moment. Deep breath, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And sometimes I would just say, "Hey, I'll get back to that," but I need to. So it's developing the habit of the pause, and the pause becomes the waiting, and the waiting becomes the wisdom. Right. So just cultivating that. I know we probably say this every episode in every White Horse podcast, but you've got to have people in there with you. You've got to have.
Can't say it enough.
We can't say it enough. And we were talking about this over dinner last night with our spouses and some friends. Community just is so essential. And White Horse is, if you say one of the people at dinner asked me, well, what is White Horse? I said, well, so leaders aren't alone, right?
Yes.
Because it's the one thing it's the one place we can't go is alone. And so just learning that over time. And that's a journey as well. And then the other thing is pay attention to, notice, Audra, what does happen to you when you don't know. So we all have different coping ways with that. Enneagram affects it. Family of origin affects it. Life experiences, all the things affect it. But some people, when they don't know, they just plow.
Yeah.
They're just like, I'm going to take action, And other people become retreat. And how do you stay engaged in the moment and the uncertainty? And so that's a muscle. That's a thing. That's some of the things we work on. And I was talking with someone I was coaching this morning, and he said, somebody asked me to describe this. He said, I wasn't quite sure how to describe it. And they said, well, what's it like walking through the White Horse stuff? He said, humbling.
I would agree with that.
But to what end? Well, humbling to the end of actually being so much more deeply connected to him that this really is, I'm doing things this way because it is his way. And there's no shortcut to that. So patience and compassion, there's no shortcut to this.
Yeah, and I would just speak to that. I find myself so often praying for quick cures when the Lord wants to do healing. And
Deep
I think
healing.
that comes from wisdom.
Yes.
You know, praying for the wisdom. And, we can have that quick emotional moment of a solution. The wisdom you're talking about today is something we can carry with us the rest of our lives.
It is.
And so I think that's the power in that pause, like you said, for something deeper, something greater, something we can always have with us.
Yes. And to your point, that's so well said. That solution that makes you feel better, solves the problem, moves on, it's great. But it is a false sense of security, Audra. It is not your security. He's your security.
Amen.
And he's after that.
Will you close us out?
I will be glad to. Yeah, Lord, thank you for opportunity to, I hope and pray, authentically, if not perfectly, represent you and your wisdom and why it matters, and why it matters to Audra and it matters to me, why it matters to the folks who are participating in Whitehorse or listening to this podcast. We just acknowledge that we weren't made to know on our own. And when we attempt to know apart from you, from the Garden of Eden forward, it does not go well. And so, Lord, grow us in our capacity to notice those moments when we're grasping for control, retreating from a threat, or whatever it may be, and this pause to posture ourselves to listen, to learn, to see, to grow, to become. Lord, I pray for those who are specifically hearing this and in a painful place of waiting, or in a painful place of disappointment in you or other people, or people being disappointed in them, and who quite honestly hear this and like it's just kind of painful to even think about. Lord, I pray your Spirit would be that compassionate, soothing, comforting guide to call that individual back to rest in you, back to relationship with you, and that the external pressures or the internal angst will roll off, and a shalom will fall on them. A shalom of like, I'm secure with my Father. It is enough. And whatever I need to know, he will make sure he makes it available, and he'll make the people available. Or just help them have that kind of posture and just be open and receptive, because I know when we're open and receptive, you will, in your time, in your way, show up and give us wisdom. You promised it. We trust you for it. And we give you the glory for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you in the next episode.